they're good gifters. They
apologies for some of the technical difficulties that we've had, but we'd just like to welcome everyone to this important kaupapa to discuss our local waters done well decision that we've been coming up. I'll just do some housekeeping before we get into the presentation. To do introductions. For safety, if there is a fire alarm, please find the exits at the rear and out here, and the meeting point is out in the car park. If there's an earthquake, please find a doorway to stand inside of. We'd like to welcome everyone online. As I've said before, we'll be holding a Q&A at the end of this. We will take questions from the floor and online following the presentation. I'll hand over now to Rehet, Mayor Rehet Stoltz, to kick us off. Thank you.
Thank you, Jade. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us today, and welcome
to the lovely crew who is joining us in person here at the library. We have a very interesting topic that we want to discuss tonight. If you haven't had the opportunity yet, take a look, a booklet about local water done well, and I'll walk you through a little bit of history before I hand over to our expert panel next to me. You will remember that maybe 4 years ago, the Labour government introduced 3 waters, and there was a lot of opposition there's some support, but I would say there was a lot of opposition to it as well. It never really got traction. And closer to the end, just before the elections, the government then moved to the 10 waters. We called it the 10 waters. So with 3 waters, Gisborne was in with, I think, 42 other councils, the whole of the North Island, including Wellington and the top of the South Island. When they moved to the 10 waters, we were included with Napier and Hastings and Wairua and Central Hawke's Bay. Then the election happened and the national government then scrapped that, and they have introduced local water done well. So there is a requirement of every single council to discuss with their community what is the best way forward. It's not optional. We are not doing this just to ask your opinion or just to spend some time. It is a really, really important piece of work, and we need your input. The comms team have put together this little booklet. It is really easy to read. You can find it if you go on the Gisborne District Council website. There is a link right on the front page. Tell us what you think, and there is a link to this booklet. What this expert team will talk about tonight and answer questions is, what are our options, what are in, what are out, what are the stuff we are considering. It is quite high level at this stage. Legislation is still to drop to accommodate some of this, but at the end of the day, we are asking you, we have got one opinion where we think we can do it in-house, ring-fence, and do it as a council. The other option is doing a CCO, but our expert panel will talk more about that a little bit later. As always, if you've got any questions, please flick us an email, text, come and talk to us, ask the questions you have. Councillors are available, staff are available, and we have heaps of hui coming up still where you can attend and you can ask your questions. That schedule will also be on the website so that you then can attend and ask your questions. Enough from me. Without further ado, I'm going to introduce Tim, Leo, and Kevin. They are the ones who are doing the hard work on this. They will introduce themselves, take it from here, work through the booklet, give you the information, and then we'll open the floor for questions. Thank you. Tim, over to you.
Thank you, Mayor Stoltz. Kia ora koutou. My name's Tim Barry. I'm the Director of Community Lifelines at GDC, and we're here to talk about local water done well. With me today on the panel is Leo Kelso, our 3 water lead, and Kevin Scott. Kevin's a local government specialist consultant helping us through this process. And so we welcome any questions that might come in. I think we've got a slideshow to assist with this, and is someone moving the slide forward? I can talk to it. Okay, so local water done well is a statutory requirement. We need to make a decision about this, and every region in the country is facing a similar decision point. We must decide, not about the reform itself, but we must decide what model we use. And that will inform something called a water service delivery plan, which is a detailed sort of financial delivery document which outlines what our future expenditure will be and will demonstrate that a financially sustainable water services entity. If we can go to the next slide, please. So our preferred option, we've got 2 options we're talking about. Our preferred option is called Our Water, Our Way. What that does is basically retains the present framework that we work to presently, but our entire system will be ring fenced, so every dollar that is spent, and it'll be separated in the rates bill, every dollar that comes in for water will be spent on water. That's essentially what it means. And that will be regulated by the Commerce Commission, who will come in and audit us throughout the year. And option 2 is another option available to us as a council-controlled organisation. There's some familiarity with that structure within the region, so there's comfort that we'd be able to achieve this as well. There's more borrowing capability with a council-controlled organisation, but higher expenses up front in the setup, and potential for more distance from decision making because you've got a separate governance system. The interest for us is retaining that community ownership of all decisions within the existing governance structure of council, which we think works really well. So our preferred option is Our Water, Our Way for the reasons outlined before. We're familiar with this delivery model. Our requirements for our region is not complex as others might be. It keeps everything in-house, and we ring fence our finances. Both these options also include looking at more advanced metering systems in future for targeted water rates for higher users. So who does it affect in our region? It affects people on the reticulated systems. So those are the drinking water systems and our wastewater systems. They're predominantly in the municipal areas. So the next slide will show the Tūranga area around Gisborne, and these are the areas that are covered by the reticulated water system, urban and surrounds. And then we've got Tekaraka and Whatatutu, which have water supply systems only, and they run wastewater systems through septic. So those are the areas that are influenced by local water done well. So please, as Mayor Stoltz has mentioned, please have your say with either visit our website or come in to council and have a talk or attend one of our hui, and they're all, you'll be able to talk to us with your communities at those hui. So yeah, welcome to do that. And it's as simple as that. That's what we need to present today. So just really interested in any feedback or questions we might have, if someone's ready to take those from the floor.
Okay.
I've just got a mic coming over here and we'll catch it.
Otherwise people
When you came out to Manatuki a while ago, I did ask about fluoride, and you were going to get back to me with the cost of fluoride, and I haven't sort of heard. Did you find out how much you charge ratepayers to put fluoride in our water?
The general cost is about a cent 1,000 litres, so it's very low.
So then my next question would be, I think that you should put it to the people whether we have fluoride in our water. Maybe it can go to a referendum.
Can I speak to that?
Yep, sure.
You will remember maybe 10 years ago, it used to sit within the remit of councils. And councils were the decision maker because we own the infrastructure that it goes in. And I would say roughly 5 years ago, maybe 6 years ago, that was removed from councils, remember that? And so all that decision making now sits with the Ministry of Health. I have received several feedback from people who are worried about fluoride or want more information. I pass that on to the Ministry of Health because that decision doesn't sit with us anymore. So I'm more than happy again to pass that on to them. We follow a directive, and we've seen around the council they stick to that directive at this stage. So I urge you also to take that up with the Ministry of Health or your Member of Parliament, because that's where that decision making sits. Any more questions off the floor? Ladies, you need to fill the space.
Yes, no, I have come with the same.
Oh, okay.
I've come with the same questions because I talking about health. I hear what you're saying. But councils are now thinking of asking for a referendum because we haven't had one since 1972 if people want fluoride in the water. So maybe we could urge the council to ask for such a referendum because you put health in as one of your first things here on page 3 for the health of our people. So it is important because, you know, lots of research have come out. We've got a guy from America have come over who won a huge court case in America. So it is not just something that is small, it's a big issue.
So again, I'll take it up with the Ministry of Health because like I said to you before, we are here more tonight, and I don't want to minimise what you're saying, so please don't see it like that, but we are here more to just talk about the structure of water systems and wastewater systems. But I'm more than happy, again, to take that information to them. And like I said, please take it up with the Ministry of Health or our local health. We don't have a health board anymore, but our local MP, because that decision sits with the government. Back on the two options where you can see there's one which would be quite similar to what we have now, but money would be ring-fenced and function would be ring-fenced, because we have invested $77 million in the last 10 years, Leo?
In the wastewater.
In the wastewater.
That investment.
And then, so there's that option. A little bit about the council-controlled option is if you have that structure, and please correct me if I'm wrong, it is easier later that if different councils want to work together and form bigger entities, it will be set up in a way that is easier to latch onto each other. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct, but
Yeah.
both options we're looking at here
Enable a future amalgamation if that is the choice of our council and people in the future. So we're not cutting off options in the future to amalgamate. And there's a fair chance that regions to our south and our north will amalgamate, but it's yet to be clarified.
And we are having discussions, because I think it's fair to say that the government would like councils to see if there's an economy of scale, if people can work together to maybe get better bang for buck. It's still early discussions, but I have reached south and north just to ask the mayors, hey, what are your arrangements? Would you like to talk to us about possibly going together? But because by the 5th of September, all of us need to tell the government, we think this is a viable option for for our regions, or 2 options. Those discussions can happen later, but we do want to be fit for purpose, that if that opportunity comes our way, we didn't set ourselves up and we need to restructure to enable us to move forward.
Another concern that's been prevalent, and it might not be ours today, but it's worth addressing, is privatisation. A lot of concerns from communities about that. This model presented by the government is explicitly ruling that out as a possibility in the near future. So for both options, we don't see a difference in privatisation being a risk, but we know it's a concern of the community, and those concerns might be being reshared. We just want to provide assurance that there's no plan in here for privatisation.
So that makes it very clear that
nobody owns the water.
I think at this stage we're talking about the infrastructure.
Yeah, no, I understand that.
So the assets.
Yeah, no, I understand that.
The ownership, the water itself is, we're really dealing with the assets that treat the water and move the water around. And the ownership of the water is not a question that Local Water Done Well addresses. So really it's the ability to convey, treat and deliver to customers is what the water service entities do, and very little more than that scope.
Okay,
Yeah. Well, they also, they have assets like land, etc. and consents and all sorts of other abilities. Yeah.
Yep. I'd also like to say thank you for the work that you did on Wainaki Road, because obviously Wainaki Road is the road to the waterworks where the water comes from, and it was in a very poor state in certain areas, and we had a meeting at Manitoki where we all voiced our concern about the state of the road, and apart from being told to drive slower, parts of the road have been repaired to quite a good state. So thank you for that. Whether that was already in the works, I'm not sure. But yeah, there were some very dangerous parts of Wainaki Road, and of course you're going to have to keep that maintained, because that's how you're going to get up there to the water.
Yes, that's right.
Time frames. I'm not good at politics, so when I see that you have to make a decision on the 26th of June, but then it gets done, I heard you say, in September, and then there's only a time till the 1st of May to hand in submissions. What is the big delay in between?
I will hand this over to my colleague Kevin.
Okay.
So there's 2 steps to this. The council and community have to make a decision about which model you want to have for your delivery of water services to the community. Do you want to keep it in-house at the council, or do you want to set up this whole new organisation to deliver it by? What we then have to do is write a plan for how we're going to do that. So you're sort of answering the what question. We then have to work out how we're going to give effect to which of those models that you've chosen. And then that plan has to be submitted to the government for them to approve or not by the 3rd of September. So we've got this month to do consultation with the community. The council then gets to consider that, all the feedback, and make a decision on what it wants to do on about the 18th of June. In parallel, we'll write the plan because we don't have much time. The plan will be influenced by the decision that the council makes, and then on the 26th of June, the council adopts the plan that we're going to submit to the government.
So would, because there's only 2 options, and that is nationwide, I take it.
Yes.
So if we decide for one or the other, it would be a very similar plan to what NAPER would do, wouldn't it? Or are we all going to reinvent the wheel and all make different individual plans?
Plans vary from council to council because the circumstances of each council are different. Each council has a different range of water assets that are in different condition. Some people have good pipes, some people have old broken pipes. Wellington has disastrous pipes because they were destroyed by an earthquake. So the cost to maintain and replace those pipes and to account for growth changes from council to council. So therefore the plan changes from council to council. The government has tried to be helpful by providing us with a template that is common across the country for what should be in the plan, but the detail changes immensely from council to council and also changes depending on which delivery option you pick.
If you think there will be some councils that are not in the position to make decisions because they will be at the top of money that they can borrow, and this is why councils have underinvested in the past, which we've seen across the country, because it is really expensive. We are lucky that we have invested quite a bit, like I say, $77 million over time. There are councils that haven't done that. They will not be in the position to, they will have to go with someone else or try and find a mate to share the load. So even though it started off with 5 initial models, the vast majority of councils are going with option 1 and 2.
Yeah.
So it's the same, but it is quite different.
And we're actually in a very fortunate position in Gisborne of having infrastructure that's in relatively good shape and has had substantial amounts of investment in it relatively recently, since post-1990. And you're not a really heavily indebted council, which means that you have both options are viable. You're not backed into a corner.
Can I jump to page 12?
Oof.
Or are we going for more slides and then we come to page 12?
No, we like page 12.
You like page 12, okay.
Yep, page 12 is good, thank you.
So, the 2,000, is that on top of the rates that we are already paying? So we're paying now about 4,000, well, it's dependent if you have a quarter of an acre section or so, but say on average a quarter of an acre section pays about 4,000. So are we going to pay 6,000 then?
This just illustrates the water portion of the bills alone. In all cases, pretty much all cases around the country, the prices are going up for water. Here you can see the average household water price at the present state, or at the projected state from where we are now. So it's not above the present. It's not above. That's not additional to the present rates.
Okay, so it will be taken off of the general rates and then put in a different thing.
It's not going to go up with $2,000.
It'll be in the hundreds of, but it will be. We are forecasting it to go up.
That is, because that's one of the main changes, is the general uniform charge goes, it's user pay. So those that are benefiting from the reticulated network are the ones that pay. So that's the change.
Think about 4 years ago, we went to a model where a tiny portion of our water rates, I think 10%, was spread that everyone in the region paid for it. 90% of it was paid by people living in the reticulated areas, so that would be the user pay. But because we recognise people who live, like I live outside of town as well, I come in, work at council, my husband works at the hospital, our kids go to school here, we are part of an operating system, so we did a 10% where everyone paid. That is now going to fall away. We can only charge people connected to the reticulated system. So roughly people who are not reticulated, they will see their water bill going slightly down. And people who are connected will see their water bill going slightly up, but not by these numbers.
Are you going to make it easier for people to have their personal bores and stuff?
Personal bores?
That's probably more a regional function than
So no, it's local water done well.
But that's something we can take
Yeah.
on board and ask. Thank you for that feedback. So that's a question we can answer. I don't have that information right here now if we're going to make bores.
and our view for a limited resource, it
there needs to be some hurdles to getting a bore and some obligations on the beneficiaries of using that bore. So it's justifiable, I think, to have some due diligence in how that's done, but this will sit outside what local water done well is looking to
Do
do.
you think there would be more water used if people would get a personal bore? Yeah, because you wouldn't use more water because you got a personal bore, would you?
Shows that it is used more because, but it's not very reliable evidence because you rely on honest, because people aren't metered out of bores. But typically they're used for irrigation purposes, which are about the largest water use you can imagine, and it's generally not hydroponic type irrigation. It's more, flood the ground irrigation. So that's from an irrigation perspective, it's a lot of water.
It is managed by the regional group in regards to allocations and then management of those for effective awareness of what's being used and that it's regulated.
But also that there's in many places within Gisborne you can't tap into the groundwater, and the groundwater needs to be monitored and managed.
Is it because it is to saline?
There's definitely the Te Hapara Sands aquifer is saline. Probably gets some out in the Makoti area, but again that's monitored. You have to apply for consent to install a bore to take water. Similar to if anyone was to take water out of a river, it's the same situation. There are some personal bores that exist, and I don't think that's going to change. That's not going to change under this.
No, it's unrelated to.
But we can still ask the question. It's not part of this
Discussion, but worth asking a question. What is the process? How and how do you get there if you want to apply?
If you have any further
No,
questions,
at
I've got
the
some online. I'm just waiting patiently.
Oh, okay.
You're ready?
One more here. Cost will increase, that is page 11. It would be lower by about $200 to $300 a year, a week, a day? A year, okay. I think that might be my last one. Yeah, okay, done. Thank you.
Please just put your hand up. I've got a couple of questions from online. So would a CCO inherit the water assets if it was a CCO option, so the pipes, the pump stations and the treatment plant?
Yeah, it's an asset-owning CCO. So, yes. And to be able to, it makes sense that if the CCO has responsibility for charging for water, it sort of needs control of the whole value chain, including the assets.
But the council owns the CCO.
Correct.
Only wastewater and drinking water assets move over, stormwater stay with council due to the connection with other services, roading, all those other stormwater assets, all linked to those hard to separate.
So that would mean, so how would stormwater be charged for?
So it will still be a separate rate within your rates bill, and potentially if it was a CCO, then the management of that stormwater asset may be given to the CCO to manage that.
What does ring fencing mean? Is our LTP budget set for specific activities not already spent on that?
So I'll have a go at ring fencing is basically drawing a circle around all the costs related to a particular activity so they're fairly accounted for. So if we were to do a business within council, we get support from all sorts of administration functions, IT functions, etc., billing teams and that the water entity would have to play a portion of. So ring fencing would determine how much of that portion would then be subject to falling under the water rating and that system. Kevin can answer this better.
The council will be required, no matter which option we pick up, will be required to report annually on its water services separate from all other council activities. So the council will literally have to produce 2 annual reports, one for water and one for the rest of the council's activity. And that annual report will need to identify exactly what revenue was collected for water and how that was spent in terms of servicing the debt required to maintain and grow the water network and in the operation of the water network. So it's very, very transparent and clear what is being spent on water across the country, because the government's great concern is that for decades and decades it's been very unclear what the revenue that's being collected by some councils for water is actually being spent on, and the suspicion is that it's been underinvested and that revenue has been used for other purposes. So that what government is trying to do is make it very, very clear to everyone how water is being funded.
Thank you. And I've got another one here. What is the difference between Our Water, Our Way and the status quo, beside the financial oversight?
It really genuinely is just the issue we've outlined with the ring fencing. So Our Water, Our Way will look and feel in every other respect. Or the additional scrutiny will come in from an economic regulator as well. So that's being stood up at the same time all these entities come into being in 2027, where an economic regulator will be pouring scrutiny over all sorts of elements of the business at the same time, and that's something that's not being done in that form at present. So that's the other new, but otherwise look and feel will be the same.
I suppose the planning process is the other leg of that. So currently, if you're a council junkie and you follow the long-term plan process every 3 years, you're aware that once every 3 years the council has to produce a long-term plan for everything it does that looks forward over the coming 10 years. And water is a component of that inside your infrastructure strategy, but it's buried inside the infrastructure strategy. Under this new regime, we're going to be required to separate water out, and every 3 years, in parallel with the long-term plan, produce a water services strategy as well. And again, that's a part of that same story of trying to produce a greater visibility and focus on what's happening with water delivery in your region.
Would council be able to borrow money from assets in control of the CCO?
Say that again, please.
Would council be able to borrow money from assets in control of the CCO? So I'm assuming that means borrow against the assets if they were under the CCO's control.
The CCO would be able to borrow against the water service delivery aspect. The council wouldn't be able to borrow against that CCO for
Other stuff.
council activities.
Which is why the assets have to go over.
If the public were to go with the CCO option, who chooses the CEO and the board of directors for it?
I don't think we've had any, we're really high level at this stage, because if you can appreciate
This will happen in 2027. So we haven't really had those, but it would be the councillors most possibly, because it is a council owned, just like we own Gisborne Holding Limited. It would be the councillors that would be doing that. We haven't had any discussions in regards to that. We're talking just at this stage basic function, structure.
Yeah, looking at how other CCOs operate in the country, they follow a
Very normal recruitment program, and then they recommend individuals for council to select. I presume the same would apply.
So council would appoint the board. The board choose the CEO. That's how it usually works in structures like that. But that's something to discuss going forward.
Yeah, you probably do need to set that out so people can make that decision. Because if people don't trust council and councillors now, you know, who's to say that they're going to trust who you choose to run this water entity? So you probably need to make that decision and make that very clear.
Can I just add that the regulator will actually be interested in that issue? The proposed law, because it doesn't pass until June, is very clear that the board of these new water organisations is to be a skills-based board and is to have skills and experience relevant to running a large utility. And one of the benefits of this economic regulation by the Commerce Commission is that they will look at that issue in particular.
One thing we haven't really touched on there is the economic regulator, but also Taumata Arawai set the standards for water. So there will be lots of independent eyes looking into what you are doing, what standards you are, what standards of water your people have or not, and what you are charging them.
Okay, can you explain what that group is?
So Taumata Arawai is the water regulator.
That's a quality regulator.
They quality, water quality.
Government.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's appointed by government
They were set up with
with the previous government's reform.
3 waters or 10 waters.
Yeah.
So they are the water quality
That's right.
regulator. So they will make sure everyone have water at a certain standard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and also the environment,
Yep.
set the environment. So when you're treating water for public
Consumption and wastewater for return to the environment, they set the standards of which must apply and then they police them.
And then something that's new, which we haven't had yet, is the economic regulator.
And that's the Commerce Commission.
who's presently formulating what that will look like.
I know the government has changed the name of Taumata Arawai to the New Zealand Water Authority, Taumata Arawai, to make it a little bit clearer. It's exactly right. So they'll
there'll
set
be 2
standards
sets
for the
of eyes.
quality of water that the council and an entity has to report against.
Further question online. What are the other 3 options, and is the community being asked if they prefer any of those as well as those being presented?
There were 5 options that the government made available to councils to choose from. They are continuing with in-house provision, or a single council CCO, a joint CCO with other councils, a consumer trust, community trust model, half owned by the council, half owned by the community, and a wholly community owned trust model. The difficulty with both those options, the community trust options, is that they have no access to debt funding through the local government funding authority, which is this government organisation that pulls together the borrowing capacity of all the councils in the country and means that you can get debt at a much lower rate than if you were going alone. These community trusts would not have access to that debt, and when you run the numbers, it makes them an incredibly expensive option for consumers, because the interest that you have to pay on the debt that you need to build the infrastructure is much higher, and that just flows through to charges, and it just didn't hit the affordability test. And then the middle option, the joint regional CCO, is a very appealing option because you get economies of scale when you put 4 or 5 councils together, and that reduces both your borrowing costs but also the cost of doing operations. But we don't have one of those on the table for us at the moment. But as Mayor Rahet said earlier on, she is in active conversations both to our south, where Hawke's Bay is discussing setting an entity up, or to our north, looking towards the Bay of Plenty. None of those options are sufficiently well developed yet for us to be able to commit to them in the time that we have available. But they're certainly not off the table. And in fact, if we went down the consumer trust option, they would be off the table. Once you put stuff into a consumer trust, a community trust, it's not coming back out. So that was also one of the reasons we have CCO and in-house as our two options. There was a full business case for this worked up last year and considered by Council in December. And at that stage, Council was asked to choose the two options to bring to the community for consultation. And it's driven very much by the time that we have available to make the decision, but also that it was so clear that the two community trust options would not work financially. It actually wasn't worth putting them in front of the community.
Kevin, it would also be fair to say that the government is really determined to make this work. There is active discussions. Department of Internal Affairs touch base with councils monthly to see what is happening, how you are progressing. And for the two options we have at this stage, which is the in-house option and the CCO, I am sure that even though we might present that in September, if it then eventuates that councils decide maybe we can go together, or DIA, being in discussion with lots of different councils, can see these may be a group that can go together, that there would then be the option to possibly pivot to that. But
if it was got across the line before 1 July 27,
yes,
we could potentially choose to go that way.
So these are really early discussions we want to have to see, are we moving in the right direction? Because like we said, some of the legislation still need to drop.
If we did select that as an option, the law requires us to come back to the community and reconsult.
Yes. So if we change, we will talk to our community.
Before we said you can only have a say till the 26th of June, isn't it? And that sounds very short, because you are making telephone calls. But as we know, things take longer than until the 26th of June. So then it is out of the question, isn't it?
It's not out of the question. Everyone is having the discussions we are having now to see what is the community appetite, what are the models that can possibly fit with what we do. We've had these discussions for 4 years. I've had all these discussions when we did 3 waters. Then especially when we did the 10 waters, we were actively working with the Hawke's Bay. I've been discussing with the Northern Councils as well. At this stage, we don't see us being part of a bigger group. I'm not totally excluding that, but for us to present to the government, everyone needs to present by the 5th of September. These two options are the most two viable options to move us forward. If then there is the opportunity where the government say, well, Hamilton is doing this, Tauranga is doing this, what do you think if you go with them? Then we can bring that option back to our community next year. Because this will happen in 2027. So we also need to take into account things might change. But this is at this stage, the discussions we are having with the community just to test, to see are we on the right track.
Okay, further question. Will people within the reticulated area be able to opt out and choose to collect their own rainwater rather than use the city supply and thus a lesser rate for water?
I don't think so. Because I think if you decide not to use the hospital and treat yourself at home, you still pay a hospital rate. So I do think you're part of a system, possibly, and you would...
The intent being that if you're in the reticulated services boundary, you will be charged for water.
Charge something, but you can always be more efficient with water, and if a metering system was to come in, you could pay less. But you find that of the water that people actually consume by drinking tends to be a very low percentage of what you actually put through your property. Often that's given the reason not to use water, but that's
the thing being it's all three waters too, so it's wastewater, it's stormwater and drinking water. And the reticulator, if you're reticulating the wastewater, so there'll be specific charges as they relate to the waters or water that you're actually within that service boundary.
But if you live in the country,
Not part
So you're not in the reticulated area then?
some areas do have a top-up feed for their tanks.
But
So in
what
that
happens
regard,
there?
that's a
They're
reticulated.
reticulated.
They are
So
definitely,
Tikaraka
even
and
though it's only
Whatututu.
trickle feed.
Yep.
If you take a look at that map, if we can go back to the map that Tim showed where, was it Manatuki?
Yeah, next slide.
So you can see
That one.
that one.
No.
You could, another one?
That one too, yeah. That's
Yeah,
right.
shows the bits who are reticulated, so they will be paying that rate, and I don't think they'll be opting out. There are certain functions that we don't use and we still pay tax for it, so I can imagine this would be the same setup. You're part of a water network.
Well, you're part of the city,
Pipes in
so
the-
the
Option exists if you don't want services, don't live in the city.
So if you live in the country and you decide you don't want to take city water, town water,
You just want to live on your tank. You're still going to get charged because you're in that.
You're part of the reticulated area.
That's not very fair, is it? Because a lot of us in the country have tanks.
So that is a submission you need to make, Angela. I'm just thinking you don't use the wastewater. You've got your own water. Yep. So that's a submission to make
yeah,
make us aware of that situation where you might not want the trickle top up because you don't get the
if it's already connected though, you'll be paying a fee.
some fee.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, we,
But I understand what you're saying.
yeah, we're
yeah.
on the main line, so we get
Full water.
We're not trickle feed, we're like full on town water. But I'd much prefer to drink tank water than fluoridated water any day of the week.
That's a submission you can make to us to take into consideration. People that still get some water but they don't get the other services, how will they be treated in the system? So,
And it would change if the council implements water meters, because then it would be, if you turn the tap off and you're using tank water only, then your meter's not ticking over and you're not getting charged.
Most of the country have meters anyway.
The government has a desire for the country to move to what they in the jargon call volumetric charging, so water meters, so that it increases the incentives for people to conserve water.
so that is also a discussion which we've had. I think it's been in our 30-year infrastructure plan for the last 6-7 years, where that is something going forward. Every council will have that discussion because, like Kevin said, that is something that the government also want to incentivise and see. So we'll have that discussion going forward as well. Any more questions, Jade?
Yes. If rates or charges will go up, why are households expected to pay more for water services, especially when many families are struggling?
Basically, it's just a recognition of the cost of supplying that particular service. The intent of the structure and the intent of the reforms is to find a balance. We understand that there are difficulties for many in our community, so there might be ways within that structure to consider people at different needs. That's something for the water entity to work through.
And it's why to the community the option that has the least increase in charges.
Yeah, but good question.
Right. I'm not seeing any further coming through.
So just again, this is number one of several meetings, and we do want people to attend and flick us an email or come and visit us as council. You can pick up this lovely booklet at council if you want to, but this booklet is easy to read. It's also on our website, so please take a little look. Lots of information in here, but really easy, straightforward information. Let us know your thoughts. This is what we think is the way forward. We also want to know what you think. And a lot of work has happened in this area, water-wise, stormwater-wise, wastewater-wise, and what we are aiming is to make it better and do better and be efficient and effective going forward. So let us know your thoughts, and then next time we will be able to let you know. Once the legislation drop as well, we'll have a better understanding of the expectations of the government. But at this stage, we need to be ready with a detailed plan the 5th of September in order to satisfy the government and the Department of Internal Affairs requirements of each and every council, to tell them what are you going to do moving forward with your water, your stormwater and your wastewater. Ka pai?
Thank you, Rehet. And I think if you could just reiterate, I think there's been a couple of comments there around, whether this decision has already been made. And I think if you could just take us back through around how council will make this decision.
About that a bit more. So you will see on the 1st of May, oops, you should not stand up when you've got your microphone. There you go. So what we are asking during the month of April, let us know your thoughts. Let us know what you think. It is really straightforward. We are asking people, do you think option 1 or do you think option 2? And then there's a block where you can tell us your thoughts or ask your questions. You've got the whole month of April to let us know. Staff will then work through all the submissions, collate all the information for councillors. As part of hearings, you have the right to say to councillors, I want to have a verbal submission. I want to make a verbal submission. You're more than welcome to come and talk to us. We will then get council together. We would have all the collated information with us, and we can then also listen to what you want to share with us. Because often when we make legislation, I say to people, we make plans, and it doesn't matter if you're in government or local government, with good intentions. It usually works for 85% of people, easy peasy, it just slots in. For 10% of people, there might be unintended consequences, which we might not be aware of, and that is where your submissions come in, which we haven't heard and what we haven't thought of. And then the last 5% of people sometimes then try to override or not follow the rules. But so we try to strike a good balance, but we still need that 10% where we might not have thought of you to come and tell us, just like you were just saying, Angela, about you living on the full water, but you don't have sewage or stormwater at that stage. So how are we going to deal with that? So that feedback is really important for us to take into account. Once we look into it, we might agree or we might not agree, but you've made us aware of an issue that's quite unique to people living outside of the reticulated area, but still have some reticulated functions. We then have listened to all the hearings. Staff then again consider and take a look at all the submissions, verbal submissions received. They feed it back to council. Then council can give their feedback on what staff are recommending. Then that is our end of financial year, a council meeting where we will then adopt our water services plan. Staff will then, under the leadership of these three gentlemen, have some time to work on the detailed plan. They are working on it now as some of that basic work can be done, but there will be submissions that we want to take into account, and then we will submit it to the government in September. And as you can see there's a big gap supposed to be there to say a lot will happen before this comes into effect on the 1st of July 2027. So no decisions have not been made yet. We want your feedback, we want your submissions, we will take it into account and then hopefully make a decision which reflect the wishes of our community. Goodbye.
Thank you, Mayor Rehet. Thank you to our panel members, and thank you for those that came along tonight and were watching online. We really appreciate you participating and engaging with us. I'd like to just remind everyone to head to the website to have a look at the information, read the consultation document, come in and pick one up from the council offices, and make your submission online. Thank you very much, and po marie.
Good evening, everyone.